So it's great to be here with everybody, and I appreciate Mel's welcome. Reading the Bible through in the year, what a great goal. Only 3 chapters per day, roughly. That's about right, isn't it, Mel?
Yeah, that's also what you're
About 3 chapters a day. You'll get there. So good to hear about that. It's terrific. So, lesson today has a simple title, Actually, and you'll see why as we go through it. And we're getting really to the end now of 2 Corinthians. I think there's just one more. There's certainly just one more chapter. I think there might be just one more lesson on 2 Corinthians. But I want you to imagine that you're standing on a beach. And you think, I can't imagine that. It's winter time. Right? But just think about you're standing on a beach and you're staring out to sea. And you see a ship on the horizon. And slowly it's steaming away from you and it slowly disappears from view, right? First, the hull disappears. This is a sailing ship. And then the masts disappear and then it's gone. It's gone. And if you judged by sight alone, what would you say? You say, well, that ship no longer exists. It's gone. It's gone into the water, or something happened to it. That's the actual. That's your perception. Actually, is what's happened. It's just gone away. But what's the actuality? Something very different, isn't it? Of course, the ship still exists. It's just gone over the horizon, the curvature of the earth, and that kind of thing. And it's moved into a space that your eyes can't see, but that doesn't mean that it ceased to exist. And in life, we often judge only by what we can see, feel, or touch, or listen to, by the actual. But God invites us, of course, to live by faith. There's plenty that we can't actually see. That is truth. And to trust that there's a greater reality, what is unseen but true. So this morning, we continue the unfolding of the story of Paul's relationship with the church in Corinth. As we know, his relationship with them has been very strained, and there's this segment of the church who have been captivated by some so-called super apostles. We know that story pretty well by now. And they've turned against Paul, and what we'll see here is their arguments are all based on simply a perception of Paul, but not the reality of Paul, not the actuality of Paul. And I believe that's an important message for us today, because perception and reality are 2 very different things. And our world has been, for example, photoshopping for quite a long time now, right? You know that the image is, the person really doesn't look that good. Right, they've been photoshopped. We know when we've come to expect that there's this perception that we're giving, which is not the reality. And now we can even make our own movies with AI, right? So much more of a challenge even. Perception can be manipulated. And I believe it's important for us as Christians to know the difference between perception and reality and to seek it out. So let's look at our passage here this morning from 2 Corinthians 12, and today I'm actually reading from the New American Standard. Paul says, I have become foolish. You yourselves compelled me. Actually, I should have been commended by you, since I was in no respect inferior to the most eminent apostles, even though I am a nobody. The distinguishing marks of a true apostle were performed among you with all perseverance by signs, wonders, and miracles. For in what respect were you treated as inferior to the rest of the churches, except that I myself did not become a burden to you? Forgive me this wrong. Here for the 3rd time, I'm ready to come to you, and I will not be a burden to you. For I do not seek what is yours, but you. For children are not responsible to save up for their parents, but parents for their children. I will most gladly spend and be expended for your souls. If I love you more, am I to be loved less? But be that as it may, I did not burden you myself. Nevertheless, devious person that I am, I took you in by deceit. Certainly, I have not taken advantage of you through any of those whom I have sent to you, have I? I urged Titus to go, and I sent the brother with him. Titus did not take any advantage of you, did he? Did we not conduct ourselves in the same spirit and walk in the same steps? All this time, you have been thinking that we are defending ourselves to you. Actually, it's in the sight of God that we've been speaking in Christ, and all for building you up, beloved. For I'm afraid that perhaps when I come, I may find you not to be what I wish, and may be found by you to be not what you wish, that perhaps there will be strife, jealousy, angry tempers, selfishness, slanders, gossip, arrogance, disturbances. I am afraid that when I come again, my God may humiliate me before you, and I may mourn over many of those who have sinned in the past and not repented of the impurity, sexual immorality, and indecent behaviour which they have practiced. So that's our text for today, and I've got 3 points on actual perception. Number 1, actual love gives, not burdens, and the actual cost of sin. Let's talk about actual perception. There's our text. And so here, Paul begins by not boasting, but reminding. And he doesn't quote a long list of credentials to go up against these super apostles with. Instead, what does he say here? He says, I'm nothing. I'm actually nothing. But I did show you something. I showed you the marks of a true apostle. I persevered in that, remember? The signs, the wonders, the miracles. God's Spirit was enabling that. Time and time again, you saw me do this. The Greek word there is hupomone, which means this steadfast patience, endurance. I was building a ministry, long-term plan. That was Paul's approach. So I think there's some key words that I noticed in here. There's our actually. But the other word that shows up twice is inferior. So what's the problem? What was the problem for the church? And they felt inferior, it says, to the rest of the churches. We don't want to feel inferior. No one wants to feel inferior, right? So what do? They look for someone or something else that would make them feel better. An eminent apostle. Here's a super apostle. We like that. We feel important now. I think that's what was going on for them. But it's a trap, right? First thing Paul does is to set something straight. That's just your perception. The actuality is, I'm in no way inferior to those most eminent apostles. Look at the distinguishing marks. And where did all this inferiority come from? The only thing they actually missed out on was a bill. And he said, I did not burden you. Paul said, I came at my own expense. You didn't have to pay me a drachma. Forgive me for that wrong. I've sinned against you. I've made you feel inferior because I didn't charge you enough. We know how that works, right? If we get something for free, quite often we don't value it. And they were getting Paul for free. But I think the key point under this is there's a couple here that this acting out of feeling inferior is a real trap. I want to feel better. They're looking at that and how they feel rather than the actuality. He was giving to them. He was sacrificing for them. He did not want to be a burden for them. The other thing we can learn is that actual spiritual authority comes from actual spiritual leadership, and that is marked by sacrifice, not showmanship. And we've got to have the discernment as a church and discernment as Christians to look beyond charisma, credentials, to look to character and cost. That's where the Corinthians weren't so good at it. And in our own lives as well. We all lead other people in our own families, for example, maybe in the church here, in our workplaces. And what counts is the perseverance and the steadfastness, the showing up, right? That's what counts. And showing up for our spouses, showing up for our children, showing up for our friends. And we may not be able to provide all the latest things and all the luxuries, but we shouldn't be discouraged by that. Remember kids growing up, and I think kids always remember that mum and dad were there, not that they didn't get the toy they wanted at Christmas. Right? It's the showing up is the true leadership. Actual spiritual authority is marked by sacrifice, not show. Don't think superior, inferior. Look at the sacrifice, look at the perseverance. That's point number one. Point number two. For this third time, I'm ready to come to you, and I will not be a burden to you. For I do not seek what is yours, but you. For children are not responsible to save up for their parents, but parents for their children. I will most gladly spend and be expended for your souls. If I love you more, am I to be loved less? But be that as it may, I did not burden you myself. Nevertheless, devious person that I am, I took you in by deceit. Certainly I have not taken advantage of you through any of those whom I've sent to you, have I? I urged Titus to go, and I sent the brother with him. Titus did not take any advantage of you, did he? Did we not conduct ourselves in the same spirit and walk in the same steps? The thing I notice here about Paul is his spectacular lack of entitlement. He's the visiting international speaker, right? That's what we're sort of seeing as today. And how does he want to be treated? He says, for me, I don't even want the flights and the accommodation. I'm getting there myself, and I'm paying for my own accommodation. And that's what he means when he says, I will not be a burden to you. Because I do not want your possessions, I want you. Let's take money out of the equation, he says. It's the safety of your faith I'm most invested in. That's what he wants to get across. Now, let me just look up horse B&B and see if I can find a place to stay in Corinth. He says, I don't care about the trappings of the job. The money, the perks, the nice hotels, the adulation. None of that actually matters. What does matter, it's you, he's saying to them. Just your spiritual welfare. That's what he's laser focused on. So I will very gladly spend for you everything I have and expend myself as well. If I love you more, will you love me less? This is kind of the emotional core of this passage. He expresses this joyful self-expenditure, but can you hear the heartbreak? If I love you more, will you love me less? That's on the line. It's that he wants that bond and that connection with them, but they're not thinking that way. And that bothers him. The more he loved, the more he gave, the less he was loved in return. And he goes on, he addresses a specific accusation that he was deceptive. Perhaps he was using Titus as a financial middleman or something like that. But he says, not only that, none of my guys exploited you either when they visited. Titus didn't, the other brother didn't. We're all about giving to you, not exploiting you. So his response is simple. Just look at the record. Look at our lives. Look at the actuality of how we relate to you. He's truth-telling in the face of slander. As we think about Paul's response here, it reminds us of Jesus, doesn't it? He was falsely accused. And he was slandered as well. But Jesus gladly expended everything he had so that we might be redeemed. That's the gospel, right? The cross teaches us what actual love looks like. And it keeps giving and keeps giving, even if it's not reciprocated, which is what Paul was experiencing. It wasn't coming back to him. Will you love me less if I love you more? That's what Jesus was like, always gave in the midst of rejection. So I think there's a question here for us that we can reflect on as we think about this is, do I love others like this? Or do I withdraw when love is not returned to me? Are we determined to continue to love people no matter how they treat us? Because that's the very heart of the gospel. Point number 3. The title of this one is The Actual Cost of Sin. All this time you've been thinking that we're defending ourselves to you. Actually, it is in the sight of God that we have been speaking in Christ, all for building you up, beloved. For I'm afraid that perhaps when I come, I may find you to be not what I wish, and may be found by you to be not what you wish, that perhaps there will be strife, jealousy, angry tempers, selfishness, slanders, gossip, arrogance, disturbances. I'm afraid that when I come, my God may humiliate me before you, and I may mourn over many of those who have sinned in the past and not repented of the impurity, sexual immorality, and indecent behaviour which they have practiced. So here's what we're seeing here is this is what sin looks like. And the strife, discord, I think it has an NIV, jealousy, angry tempers or fits of rage, NIV, selfish ambition, slander, gossip, arrogance, disorder. And all of these things, where do they all come from? All come from self. And I'll break that down in a moment. And this sin, it's not a very famous list, is it? You think of a sin list in the Bible, what do you think of? Mark 7, 1 Corinthians 6, Romans 1, not 2 Corinthians 12, but it's up there, right? And but the ones that are in here are very connected very clearly with self. Let's just go through them. Jealousy means you can't have what I have. Fits of rage. I'm not getting what I want, and I want it now, and you are blocking me. So I get angry. Selfish ambition. I want to get where I want to go, get out of my way. Slander. I will lie about you to advance my interests. Gossip. I lie about you creatively to advance my interests so that other people will spread it for me. Arrogance. I don't care about you, your situation, or what you think, or anybody else. Disorder. Chaos suits my purposes. Let me create some. These are all kind of relational type sins, aren't they? Use of the tongue, personal ambition, only thinking about me. And then the second list there are the handmaidens to these. Impurity, sexual sin and debauchery. If you're selfish and arrogant, then sleeping with someone who's not your spouse, even when you've even when you have one, goes in hand, doesn't it? I don't care about you. I'm getting what I want. It's a natural kind of progression. Today, I'm selfish and arrogant. Tomorrow, I'll sleep with whoever I want to. And it's interesting that there's 3 different words: impurity, immorality, indecent behaviour. And possibly a progression. Impurity is more internal. Acts done privately, moral filth. Immorality, clear violations of the marriage ethic. And then sensuality, we're getting to the point where we're doing things in public now. Shameless indulgence. So maybe, and these things, of course, were problems in Corinth, weren't they? It was prostitution was a problem in Corinth. Ritual temple sex was a problem in Corinth. And they aren't abstract issues, they're spiritual infections tearing the church apart. But what's important here, I think, is to understand Paul's heart. How does he come across when he's talking about this? He's not angry and condemning, I don't think. He's grieving. He's mourning about this. I have to mourn over many who sinned earlier and have not repented. He's using the subjunctive mood in Greek, which means I may have to. This is not a done deal. It doesn't absolutely have to be this way, but that's how it's looking right now. I may have to grieve. I hope it's not going to be that way, but with so much self going on, unfortunately, it's likely. I really hope it won't be like that when I get there. And I think this is Paul's love showing again. And he's not concerned about the personal attacks on him. He's concerned about this unrepentant sin that he sees in the hearts of God's people. And again, this reminds us of the gospel, I think. The sin in the world infects and destroys. It destroys lives, it destroys marriages, it destroys families, it destroys businesses, it even destroys countries, all to Satan's glee. And Jesus came to put a stop to its unbridled power. That's what the cross was all about. And the Bible teaches us that he's given his Spirit to each one of us to fight so that we can fight sin's deadly effects. You've been rescued from its clutches. Don't jump back into sin's cesspit. You've been rescued, Corinthians. Don't get involved again. And he's expressing his fear that some of the Corinthians have done exactly this. After being rescued, they've allowed themselves to be infected by worldly thinking and the culture of the day. And they've been dragged back in. And so, again, perception versus reality, the whole story of 2 Corinthians is more than just a political struggle for the control of the church, right? It's about a deadly spiritual struggle for their very souls. So, wrapping up. Actuality versus perception. What's really going on? Ask yourself this question. What do I take the most notice of? Do I spend time trying to latch onto something that will give me some relief from my feelings of inferiority? That's the first point we talked about. Will I throw all that off and seek for the truth instead? Ask yourself. The second thing we talked about. Does my heart just want to give to others? Or do I set up bars for people to jump over? Do I place burdens and tests on others for my love? We need to throw them off as well and learn to love like Jesus. The third thing we talked about, what's our attitude towards sin like? Does it grieve me? If it's in my life or in others' lives. Not judgment or condemnation or even disgust, but grief and mourning. An attitude towards sin that's actually rooted in love. So we've talked today about seeing beyond mere appearances, living not by what merely seems, but by what is true in God's eyes. Actual perception. That we would not be swayed by shallow comparisons or false claims of greatness, but become a people who hunger for what's true. To seek out that truth and be determined to do that. Actual love gives, that we would model our life after the kind of life that we see in the lives of Jesus and Paul. Love that gives rather than demands, that builds others up, not burdening them and weighing them down. And finally, the actual cost of sin. That we wouldn't minimise or ignore the damage that sin creates, not just in ourselves but in others as well, and to meet it with compassion, not condemnation. My prayer today is that we can walk away today with a clearer spiritual vision, not just eyes that see, but hearts that discern what really matters. To God be the glory, who sees past the surface and calls us into his deeper truth, deeper love and deeper freedom.